Yeah.
We're here to talk today about epilepsy and gaming. So, Lyrio, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll start from there.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. As you guys follow me for a minute on Twitter, you guys know I've been trying to be more vocal and bring more awareness to epilepsy and gaming and accessibility. I myself am the CEO and co-founder of Outrun Digital. Outrun Digital is a powerhouse of geniuses in virtual reality and esports, developing various solutions for esports that go from VR developers, publishers, athletes, advertisers, and a bunch of other players in the various verticals among VR and esports. And we have currently, most of what we do right now is just do stealth. Even our website is down right now, is offline because we're trying to keep a lot of things in the down low as we develop, just for our own safety. But one thing that we do have publicly available and accessible and ready to and running right now, actually we have it competition running right now. It's the High School Heroes Esports League. That league is part of our social impact pillar among our company, that we basically test our tools and our solutions with our own leagues, and we don't profit from any of the leagues that we run. So all the leagues that we run, they are charity focused. We're applying for the nonprofit title within the US as well. And every single tournament, revenue generated from sign-up fees or advertisement and sponsors and whatever, we always redirect that 100% to some good cause. So for the High School Heroes League, what we do is all the money, all the revenue that we generate through those school sign-up fees and advertisers, we buy in Oculus Quest 2 headsets, and we ship them to the underprivileged high schools in the United States. So those are the ones that have the Title I classification, which means that those schools have at least 40% and over students that come from low-income families. So those students generally will not have access to VR, will not have access to this technology and great tool for not just gaming, but everything else in between. And usually those schools also don't have the budget to buy that equipment and participate and play with us. So that's what we do with the money. We give 3 headsets to each Title I school. Every season we give between 5 to 10 schools enough headsets for them to play. We've waived all the fees. We give them the jerseys for the team as well. And each school plays in the league for cash prizes for the athletes and some other prizes such as game keys and products and shirts, merchandise from all different VR developers. And what the schools get in as value for participating in the league is that the schools have access to VR developers that make platforms and experiences made exclusive for high schools, so they can have virtual reality classes and virtual reality experiences that are educational. And at the same time, those schools in their league always have an interscholastic league that they can always be part of. So God forbid we go through another pandemic and we have another lockdown and all the sports get canceled again. Virtual reality is still there. All the kids can still play from home. Right now, all the kids in our league are playing from home on the current season. So it's completely pandemic safe. So it's an alternative and honestly a solution, because it unites gaming with exercising, as we all in VR know how much exercising you can get in VR. So yeah, and we are the first and only virtual reality league to have receive an official accreditation from the STEM.org Foundation. So we are officially a STEM accredited educational experience, which helps a lot when we're talking to the schools. So it gives them for the schools and the parents and educators in general, it works as a badge of credibility, as a proof that, hey, we are educating your kids, we're providing value to your school and to your students. And yeah, that's what we do publicly. We have 5 more leagues to announce, each with a specific charity focus. Not all of them for high schools, each one for different types of players and different groups of players. And we'll have one as well to announce that will be available for everybody to participate. And all of those, the money generator will be just sent to either a charity foundation, a nonprofit organization, or to a specific cause that we support.
How did that come about? Like, how do you get into something like that? How did it start?
For the league, how we came up with the idea?
Just for your whole company, or like, I'm gonna help these people doing this? Like, how do you?
Yeah. Well, how do you go from idea to action on that one? That's a big.
Yeah. Since
Big
it's
spiel.
just it's me and then my co-founder Cutie Pop, Justin, and then Taylor, who's known as Pasky Cashew. It's the three of us mainly, doing all the hard work behind the scenes and doing the pretty much everything in the back end and the front end. We have some partners helping us, such as Via Respawn. So Poon Anners is our official caster for every season. We have some volunteers, which are usually teenagers in high school as well, who either the school did not choose to not participate or could not participate, or they're out of high school, they're in college, they're in university, they're out of university working, but they want to help us, and give their knowledge, and help us, grow the league. So yeah, we created the league because during the pandemic, that was back in June of last year, we noticed that there was a lot of articles in the news talking about how the suicide rates were increasing for teenagers and high school students in general, mainly because those kids could not play sports, could not participate, could not keep competing, which is something that for the American culture is very very valuable and very very loved, and also is a chance for them to get into a scholarship into a very big university that can determine their future. So those kids not being able to compete, not being able to practice, not being able to get those tuitions, it was the pandemic was slowly increasing the suicide rates. So I was talking to Cutie Pop, and at the time, me and him and Pasky as well. Pasky is one of the biggest esports VR esports players, in the history. We all had pretty bad experiences with some other tournaments. Not all of them, like a very small amount, but it was all one after the other. And we're like, well, let's just do a tournament. Let's just do a league that does everything right. It's not super extreme, and we're not gonna try to compete with ESL or like League of Legends and whatever. But let's just do something that works right. It's good for the players, and we try to do some good at the same time. And then we're like, well, let's just do for high schools. Like, let's just get VR into high schools, because we see, all three of us, we see the potential, and we know the potential. We know the guys who work making educational virtual reality content and experiences and platforms like Engage and Victor XR. We know those guys, and they could use any help they can get to get exposed to the schools, right?
Yeah.
So that's when we just tied everything together, and then we partnered up with the Draper Hero Institute, which is a nonprofit here in San Mateo, where I live in California. And it's a nonprofit that invests in young entrepreneurs making a change in the world. And they help us with the whole legal side of stuff and some operational costs that we have, like services that we have to subscribe to and all of that jazz. And yeah, and then we just started planning everything, announced the first season, which was the test season that we call Invitational, back in December. Thrill Seeker, which is a good friend of us, gave us a huge shout out in his YouTube channel, which made a bunch of people sign up, a bunch of schools get interested. And then we hosted the Invitational event on February. It lasted for a whole week. We donated equipment, 33 quests to 11 Title I schools in the U.S. Initially, it was just for the U.S. Now we're accepting applications from schools anywhere in the world. But yeah, it was amazing. The kids got the total prize pool for the kids was about $6,000. We put in $3,000 from our own pockets, including Oculus Quest headsets for the first place winners, and then other VR developers contributed to the prize pool, and other friends, and even individuals as well. I myself contributed $1,000, Cutie Pop $1,000, Pasky $1,000, and then a bunch of other developers gave out keys and merchandise and stuff like that. It was great. It was amazing. And now, actually, last week on the 2 weeks ago, on the 28th of June, we started the season 1, the official season 1, with 18 schools. Now we are into the brackets, so the qualifiers is over. So now in the brackets, 14 schools qualified and proceeded over. And now we are going to the second round of the winners round, to double elimination competition. For this season, we have a big partner and sponsored, which is Viveport, that I'm really, really happy to announce and just tell everybody, because it's a great sign. Like, we're using Quest headsets, but Viveport is is supporting our mission. One,
awesome.
because they work with Quest, they work with every single headset out there, but also shows how united the VR industry is, both from the professional side, also from the community side. We all know how united the VR community is, but also on the professional business side, Lifeboard is supporting a league that is using Quest headsets. So it's amazing. The kids are gonna get the kids are getting Viveport Infinity keys that are for 6 months long, so they get for free 900 games and experiences they can play. And there's a bunch of other players coming in as well. We're talking with a company who makes some routers specific for the Quest 2 that give very low latency for people who want to do AirLink and virtual desktop.
Nice.
And of course, we're talking to Engage and Victory XR and all the educational stuff to add more value and give some of those prizes as well to the school so they can use at the school whenever we're not hosting a season. Yeah, really excited. It's growing a lot.
That's a lot. Like I'm glad it's going well, because we've talked to educators about getting VR in classrooms, and it's not easy. And you guys just seem to be doing some really good work with that, getting it into the hands of kids and getting schools okay with it and on board. And that's awesome.
Yeah, it is. I'm not gonna lie. It is hard work. It is very complicated. It is very hard, especially now that we're hosting a season during the summer break, which now recognize it was a mistake. We thought, hey, the kids are going to be at home out of school and they need something to do, so let's offer them a season during the summer break. But in return, actually, a lot of kids are not at home. A lot of kids are traveling, visiting their families, and sometimes they don't have Wi-Fi, or they just don't have access to the headset, or the school is closed or something. So there's a lot of issues here and there that we're learning as we go, and we're improving it. But we are very happy, especially with the support from the community. A lot of friends on Twitter and Facebook, LinkedIn, especially in Clubhouse, a lot of people have reached out to us. People that are not even in VR, like, for example, the Global Esports Federation, we're talking to them there to try to get some partnership going on. We have the Stay Plugged In guys as well in talk with us so that we can start offering some way of scholarships for the kids in the league who graduate and go to university. They can keep playing VR for the university and get tuitions to go to those important universities and colleges out there. So yeah, it's a lot of we're getting a lot of support, but it is a lot of work. But it all pays back. Seeing the kids playing, excited, and talking in a Discord, and also getting random emails from parents and teachers just thanking us and saying how grateful they are. Like, we have one team that one of the players is in the autism spectrum, and she emailed us asking to do a Zoom call, and we invited her for a Zoom video call, and she just wanted to thank us and say how helpful it has been VR for her kid, and getting them to exercise and socialize more. So it all pays back, you know. It's really good.
Awesome.
It feels really good. I'm really excited to introduce the outdoor leagues as well, and show people like the other good we can do with VR just by playing.
That's amazing. It's the funny thing is, like, we could do a whole couple podcasts on that, but that's not even why you came here today. So
no, sorry. You asked me about the league. I'll talk for 8 hours. I apologize.
No worries. Before we switch gears, though, Madman, Diamond Paws, any questions on that so far? You can come on up, Diamond Paws.
I don't have a question, but I will say, coming from in high school, I was in a robotics team, and I know at least somewhat how hard it can be to get schools to adopt things, because even with something as established as robotics competition, they weren't willing to give us funding or work with us to sort anything out. We had to do it all ourselves.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. We have a few schools that they have their esports club, but the esports club is just a student run. And they have to get the fundraising and do everything on their own. Like, the only thing they get from the school is just access to one of the classrooms when they're empty, so they can meet up. So yeah, it's very, very hard on the student side, also on the teacher side, to just get approval for the budget. And also on our side, it's hard for everybody, but everybody seems to be willing to help, willing to work, and willing to find ways around it to make it work. And it all pays off. And even if one school can't join on this season, we put them on the wait list, and on the following season, once we get some more donations from advertisers, we can sponsor that school as well. So it's very good, and we're now, I think, at 1,100 members in the Discord community, when we actually only have 18 schools playing, which is about 54 players. So everyone else is fans and supporters and parents and teachers and coaches. So it shows that the support is there. It's just hard to get the word out there, pretty much.
Yeah,
that's the hardest part. Yeah.
That's like, go ahead, Wookie.
I say, when people don't have anything to look forward to, something like that can just be the difference between, quite a few different outcomes. So it's just fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. And while I can't talk much about some of the tools we're developing, one of them will actually facilitate anyone in the world who wants to create a league or create a tournament, and we will almost 100% automate the whole process. And we hope that with our leagues, with our charity-focused leagues, the other 5 that we'll announce later, and the Heroes League, that we will incentivize other people who have the intention and the mission to do some good, some social impact, regardless of what it is. Any minority group, any underprivileged groups that they want to support through a gaming tournament, and it doesn't need to be VR. It can be computer or console or mobile. They'll be able to use our tool for free and just do good. And we hope to inspire people through our leagues to also do good as well. We want to see more VR high school leagues. We want to see VR collegiate leagues, and we want to support all of them. The more good we do, the better we evolve as humans. So
that's amazing. Yeah, why don't we switch gears into your main topic? So I kind of noticed the posters on Twitter talking about, raising awareness for epilepsy and gaming, and kind of started talking about it. And I just thought it'd be a great thing to talk about here and get it out in the open. And so and I told you, like, I don't know anyone with epilepsy, so if I misspeak, forgive me, I don't mean anything. But, when I load up any game, it has the warnings and stuff, and it's like, sometimes I'll sit there and think about that, like, how would I handle that, not being able to do what I love, which is gaming? So one of my first questions to you was, how do you even get into, like, I don't know anything about anything. So is VR possible when you're epileptic, or are there different levels of things, or like, how does this all work?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I've had epilepsy ever since I was 3 years old. One of the biggest myths that people have, basically because they don't understand epilepsy, is that a video game, a movie, something like going to a nightclub can give you epilepsy. That's not how it works. Right. You cannot just get epilepsy. You cannot be born with epilepsy. You cannot contract epilepsy from your parent, from a partner, or whoever. Epilepsy is something that your brain develops. At the same time, there are people who have seizures and don't have epilepsy. All epilepsy is a definition that your brain, your neurons, operate at a higher frequency and a higher speed than average. And basically what happens is, sometimes at some point in time and space, something triggers your brain to get your neurons overclocked, I like to say, and operating faster than it used to. And then they just get all caught up and make a big mess, and then basically your brain gets a blue screen, and it needs to restart. And that's how I like to explain seizures. It's basically your brain as Windows restarting because it's out of memory or something. So that's what it is. Anyone at any point in life can develop epilepsy, although it's very rare. It's about 1 in 4,000 people that have epilepsy in the world. And there's very different types of epilepsy that we could go on for hours, but the most common one that everybody knows is the photosensitive epilepsy, which is part of the reflex epilepsy group of epilepsies and seizures. And that one affects it's so rare, but everybody knows that one. It only affects 3% of all epileptic people in the world, and 0.3% of all the population in the world. So reflex seizure for photosensitive people is basically you get a major, it's called a grand mal seizure, when you have flashing lights and flickering screens and stuff like that. And the grand mal seizures are the ones that everybody knows and seen in videos and whatnot, that the person falls on the ground, loses consciousness, and starts jerking and moving the arms and contracting and retracting the arms and legs and everything. And usually lasts anything from a few seconds to 5 minutes. And if it's over 5 minutes, then you need to call an ambulance. So for gaming, especially in VR, it's a double-edged sword if you love gaming, if you love VR, because it's a little hard. Like, those warnings are a must, and I am super appreciative that more and more games have those warnings. Although they're not enough, they're at least a warning. Like, at least I know what I'm getting into. There are a few things that I do for flat gaming. For example, I cannot have a regular monitor that is 60 hertz or 75 hertz refresh rate, because if there is any flickering, any blurring, especially motion blur, it can be a little triggering for me. So even for people who are not photosensitive, in their epilepsy, they don't get a seizure straight up from just seeing flashing lights. Those flashing lights and those flickerings on the screen can actually trigger the epilepsy migraines, which is like a little stronger than regular epilepsy, and those migraines then can trigger a seizure. So even though the person might not get instantly a seizure, if they keep looking at flickering lights and stuff, eventually they will, because they would just get so much headache. So for VR, I always try to look at trailers first and see how the game is about. I try to watch some gameplay videos, some like playthrough videos if I can find, to see if there's any major elements that I think would trigger me. There are also other reflex seizures that are triggered by audio, by songs, There's another one that is triggered by contrasting patterns. So those pictures on Google that are like optical illusions and stuff.
Yeah.
Some people get seizures from just looking at those in movement. So there's a lot of other different types. For me, luckily so far, I haven't had any type of trigger outside of the photosensitive, but not instantly. Like I said, it gives me headaches. So for VR games, for example, Beat Saber, I think, was the third game in VR I ever tried. And the first moment I got in, I saw all those flashing lights and the song, and it was beautiful. It was amazing. It was the third game I ever played in VR. Back in, I don't know, the end of 2016 or the end of 2017 or something. I was amazed at it, but at the same time, I quit out the song and I asked my friend, hey, can I turn off those lights? And I could. From the very first build that I ever tried on Beat Saber, there was an option, disable light effects. So that's a great thing. Most games in VR, especially in VR, do not have any type of accessibility features and options to customize to better suit that player that is disabled in some shape or form. But just to start, if all the games could just offer a way to either just dim the light effects or change the color of them, because majorly the red and white flashes are the ones that trigger seizures. So if they could change the red lights to blue lights, if they could change the white lights to black. So for example, if I'm playing Pavlov or Onward and somebody sends a flashbang, it's going to white out my whole screen. And while just one whiteout is not a big deal, usually the flickering lights that cause seizures are any flickering lights that happen 3 times per second. So it's got to be a lot. Even if one flashbang might not cause me a trigger, if a whole squad throws flashbangs one after the other, it's going to be a bunch of white flashes. So, for example, if I was playing Onward or Pavlov or Contractors or whatever shooter, and I could change the option, like, hey, click on option here, I have epilepsy, and change the flashbang to, instead of being white, being a blackout, that already solves the issue. And it works the same way, because I won't be able to see anything regardless. So I'm still flashbanged. It's just black instead of white. And the same goes to, for example,
3-5 flashbangs. If I have them in my inventory, it's like, get them to get out of the doorway, then I'll run in the doorway and chuck another one. I'll just keep chucking them at people. So now I should.
And I mean, I don't hate on players that do that because I do that sometimes too. It's a competitive advantage if you can do it sometimes. So I don't hate on the players that do it. I don't hate on anybody that do it. I don't hate on the developers that are not aware, because honestly, most of them, they're not aware of how to make your game more accessible.
I'm
Yeah,
curious,
like,
when we
yeah.
talk about accessibility, you know, the color blindness has been a thing that they've been implementing more and more and more and more. So yeah, I think just getting the word out, because I haven't heard of any of this stuff that you've mentioned, and I feel like an asshole. But for gaming, I mean, it's, you know, just to get awareness for devs to include these options, because those are easy, like turning it from white to blue, like you said. That's not that hard. So
Yeah,
just curious
yeah.
what else you would like to see or what would help.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the player's responsibility to understand everything about every disability ever, neither is the developers, but I think it is a responsibility of the platforms and the publishers to get together and develop and get together with the actual medical community, who understand those researchers, those scientists, those doctors that actually treat each type of disability, to develop some shape or form of standard that is
I was just gonna
required
say,
for
yeah.
every game. A standard will be very appreciated among all the disability community, especially for epileptic people, in games in general. It would be absolutely amazing to have a standard that developers can follow, and they can have a guide in there. With that being said, there is a few guides. For example, Oculus has an accessibility guide that does not speak much about epilepsy or some other disabilities, but it's there. It's a starting point. I believe Vive also has. I believe Viveport also has one, and I'm not sure about Steam. Steam might have one for general games, but I don't think they have for VR specific. For Windows platform, I'm not aware if they have or not. And the base is there. You can Google around a lot of different things that as a developer that you can implement to make your game more accessible. I think just the major problem is just not having a standard and one centralized point of information where they can get those resources, and they can maybe just straight up download SDKs that they can just implement in their builds, and it already does it for them. And you just have to point out in the settings, oh, this button will react to this action in here. And that will make everyone's life easier. So yeah, I think it's developing a standard and developing and sharing publicly resources that the developers can use both in VR and flat gaming. That would be extremely helpful.
Further than that, I think all platforms like Oculus and Xbox and PlayStation should have some sort of certification too. Like these games, something that somebody can search by, because if they don't even, you might want to get halfway through a game to realize it's going to cause that. And you've lost the $60 or whatever. You've lost all that time. You can't finish the story you might be invested in. That really ticked me off. But if they have some sort of certification, like it's, like whatever disability or whatever type of epilepsy, they just had a little mark to say this one's, it's got options for you. I might feel a little more included in the discussion of not wasting all my money on a bunch of games I just can't finish. So standard and certification process would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And there could even be a certification with various levels. So for example, if you think about a power supply for a computer, you have the 80 plus, bronze, gold, platinum, diamond, extreme, super, ultra advanced, whatever. You could have those certifications as well. So even for an indie developer who's developing in his garage alone a game, he could initially get the basic certification like a bronze accessible game, and that has just the color blind options, for example. But then as he makes some money and he's able to save some time to implement more features, then he can apply and get another certification that is a higher level. And I think that idea is great. If having a certification, a little badge for each game, and especially in the stores, in the marketplace, that I could filter. That would be amazing. If I could filter out, show me VR games or flat games that are safe for people with epilepsy.
If the gold or platinum level of that means, on every game you see that, it allows for my special condition or whatnot, I would just sort by platinum, and then I'd have, a lot easier time doing it. Because even without, a disability or a visual thing like that, I mean, I've got some slight stuff where I'll get headaches and stuff from new games, but I don't know what's going to happen until 3 hours into it and stuff like that. And I hate wasting $60 on a game that's just gonna not go anywhere too. And that's the mildest form of anything, I'm sure. So it's got to be tough. And this is the kind of stuff like when PJ says, we see those warnings, and it's kind of like it does make you think, but we don't know the rest of the public. They just don't know enough what to think about. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
Yeah, a different solution will be for a group of developers. I don't know how. I have a basic knowledge of coding and programming in general, but I can handle myself around, but I don't know the specifics. But another good alternative would be mostly for flat games to have an app for disabled people that operated on top of the games. So think of it as a reshade. I don't know if you guys are aware, in shooter games you can use reshade to change the colors and to mod and add some textures and whatever and change the crosshair of the shooter game. Kind of like reshade, where he goes on top of the game, and whenever he detects some sort of element or effect that is triggering for some disabled people, you could tick that, like, oh yeah, hide this element or something. As long as it's not an advantage, especially in a multiplayer game, a competitive game, as long as it's not considered cheating, having that software that could work on top of it and just block out or remove or change the color or something, that could also be very helpful for.
And not get you banned, like.
Yeah, and not get me banned.
Reading the memory and stuff like that, they probably wouldn't be a fly, but.
Yeah, exactly.
A
so for example,
shop app would be great.
Yeah, so for example, I play a lot of Apex Legends on my free time, which is not a lot recently, but every time I have 30 minutes, I'll play a little bit of Apex. And what I had to do is I had to study the Valve source engine and study all the different GitHubs and stuff that people shared to learn the specific commands that I could put in the auto exec to reduce some of those issues and those patterns and those flashes in Apex. Because, for example, a main one that can cause people seizures, and I'm sure it has caused before and nobody has spoken about it, is when you get into a match, you have to pick your character, and when you click on your character, it flashes the screen to everybody in your team. And what happens is it's just one flash, which is fine. It's a white flash on the whole screen. It's okay. It's just one. But what happens is some players like to click and unclick, click and unclick, and just keep flashing everybody else's screen. And that can cause me a headache. And that actually, Cutie Bob, we always play together. He knows, he can speak for it. There's various times that I get a lot of headache out of nowhere and I don't realize. And when I started to think about it, I was like, oh yeah, there was that dude 3 matches ago that was spamming, selecting Octane or whatever, and that's what I'm having a headache. So I just tell him, hey, I'm going to log off, I'm going to stop and go to sleep before I get a seizure or something. So for example, Cyberpunk, I haven't finished Cyberpunk until today. I waited 3 months after most of us saw that news article about a journalist with epilepsy that was talking about how triggering it was, one of the events in Cyberpunk. And I waited about 3 months before I purchased the game because they said that the developer said they were going to implement some features and accessibility stuff to prevent those seizures and those triggers. And I waited 3 months, and it still gives me headaches. And I haven't played, I think, for another 2 months. I haven't even opened it yet. I tried using Reshade to change some textures and some color effects and stuff. But I haven't played yet because every time I open up Cyberpunk, other elements that I can't pinpoint yet, I haven't been able to figure out exactly what it is, still give me a lot of headaches and migraines, and just as a precaution, I have to stop. So it's kind of disappointing, especially for games that I'm really excited and hyped about and that I can't play. And I can't play. Those are really, really disappointing. But what can you do? You learn to live with it. Some games I can't play. Some games I have to play very short periods of time, and that's how we've got to do right now.
Yeah. I just, when I was talking on Twitter, I looked at your bio, and your freaking bio about made me cry. Like, I don't know if you want to explain that for the listeners, but.
You mean about the SUDEP?
Yeah.
Yeah, so SUDEP is an acronym that means sudden death from epilepsy. Sudden unexpected death from epilepsy. And what that is anybody with epilepsy at some point in time has a chance of simply not waking up one day. It's not that I'm gonna have a seizure and I'm gonna get hurt and I'm gonna die out of that. That can happen as well. Like if I have a seizure and I'm walking in the middle of the road and I fall on the ground and a car goes over me, I die because of the seizure. But the SUDEP is not related to necessarily related to the seizure. Epilepsy itself is yet not completely understood, even though it has been studied for over 100 years. It is not completely understood yet, and the medical professionals don't really have a solution for everything. SUDEP is among one of those things. It's one of the most mysterious things that nobody understands in the medical community. Nobody knows how to prevent. Nobody knows how to predict a higher chance or something. There are of course things that we can do as epileptic to prevent that. But it's the same measures you can take to prevent any type of seizure, which is avoiding stress, getting enough sleep, and trying to not extend yourself, like over exercise or over do anything too much, because all those actions are wrong actions, like not eating, not sleeping, and getting stressed and stuff. Those basically trigger your brain to operate in a higher speed and a higher frequency, and then the neurons get in a higher speed, and then you get a seizure. So you can still act and take those measures to prevent SUDEP, but that's a risk that every epileptic person is aware once they're old enough to understand the disability they have, and the doctors and the parents teach them about it in case they have it in early childhood. That's a risk you always have. So at one day, any point in time, maybe even if I'm treating myself and I'm having the most healthiest life, like I'm healthier than whatever super strong dude that is a nutritionist or something he has, like I'm having the best healthier life ever in the world. One day I can simply not wake up. So SUDEP does not hurt the person. You cannot predict. There's no signal that they can pinpoint that will happen. It's just that one day you simply don't wake up. What's after that, we don't know, but you simply don't wake up, and the ones that are hurt the most are the families and close friends. So a famous example is I forgot his first name, but he was a teenager, young adult, who was an actor at Disney, for the Disney Plus channels, and I think he died of SUDEP at 21 years of age, and now the epileptic community celebrates his day, his birthday, as like his day among the epilepsy community, and the SUDEP day. I don't remember which one it is right now off the top of my head. But here's a famous example that happened, I think, 4 years ago. He simply just did not wake up. So there's that. So on the bad side, there's that. I might just not wake up tomorrow. On the good side, the way I see it, I mean, I can't speak for all people with epilepsy, but the way I see it is, for me, it really inspires me to try to achieve as much as I can and try to leave a legacy and try to just do good. And recently, since the last year, it actually also worked as an incentive for me to be more vocal about epilepsy, about me having epilepsy and being an epileptic, and bringing awareness to all those things. Because I might not be here tomorrow, and let's say if after this life we actually have a conscience, whatever, I go to heaven and I'm aware of my past life, or I start another life, whatever, and I'm aware that I didn't do enough, and I got that feeling that I didn't do enough in my past life, or whatever, I'm born as an alien, it's still, I'm still gonna feel disappointed. I know for myself I'm gonna feel disappointed. So on the good side, it inspires me to always work hard as much as I can, safely, and try to achieve as much as I can, and do good and spread awareness, because I might just not be here tomorrow. So I also always make sure to tell my friends and family that I love them, that I appreciate them as much as I can, as much as I remember to do so, because that's what I want them to remember. Like if I don't get to live to 120 years old, which was my goal, I want to be remembered as the guy who was happy and made others happy and did good things. So that's for me. Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's why I thought your bio was so great, because you're like, before this happens, I want to leave a mark and I want to make what I enjoy better for other people that have the issue. And it's just,
yeah,
you got me.
It's I have a lot of bucket list goals, or I would say lifetime goals in my life that I want to achieve. And one of them is that one. One of them is on top of my list is making sure that I can, even if I am not directly responsible for making games more accessible, I want to make sure that at least I was indirectly responsible. I don't care if somebody else or a company looking to profit on top of it. I don't care if anybody else implements some magical solution that makes games more accessible for everybody. They can take the credit. I don't care, as long as I know that I did my part. And then that came sooner than later. That's the most important thing. Like, the sooner we can get that games more accessible for everybody, VR or flat, the better it is for everybody.
Yeah, and I think. Go ahead.
Good.
I was going to say that, everyone should live their life that way anyway, but obviously it's a little different. And I know I could tell by your tweets you were frustrated because you were trying to get on to a couple panels and they weren't having it. So you want to talk about that a little bit? Because that sounds like some bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say the name of the conference because it's not ethical. But there is this one major global conference, and in one of the communities that I'm part of, for XR people, a private community, one of the persons responsible for organizing the panels posted in one of the group chats saying, "Hey, I'm looking for people in the XR industry that have experience with accessibility and disabled people and disabled users. Please reach out to me to speak on if you want to speak on a panel about accessibility in XR." And I reached out and I was like, "Hey, I myself have epilepsy. Like, this is my thing. I can solo run this panel if you want me to, and I can talk about all things for as many hours as you want during the event." And she was like, "Okay, let's schedule. Let me give you a call and let's talk about it, understand it, and see if you're a fit." And I was like, "Okay, here's my phone number and call me whenever." I was like, "Why do you need to call me if I just told you that I have epilepsy?" But okay. And she called me, and the lady called me, and after explaining to her my whole life and everything I'd gone through, talked for a whole 30 minutes, because pretty much when you ask me about VR or epilepsy, I'll talk as much as I can. Then she said, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm actually looking for the VR and MR and AR developers who have developed experiences that are accessible or developed accessibility features. We're not looking for users' feedbacks or discussions for this panel." And I didn't lose my patience or temperament or anything. I just said, "Okay, thank you, bye." But that really disappointed me because I can tell as a user, I am not aware of major popular titles and experiences and platforms in the XR industry all around that are accessible. I mean, there are a few games and experiences that have some options. Granted, I give them credit for that, but there aren't any specific ones that I'm aware of that were made with intention of being accessible for people like me, for people with other disabilities. I am not aware, and I think the most important thing is developing awareness. And how do you develop awareness in the community, especially for the developers, for the workers, for the big companies, the big players in the industry, if you don't put those people that have that experience, those disabled people trying to enjoy the same experience that everybody can enjoy the same way? How do you spread awareness if you don't hear their feedback and what they want and what they ask? Because we don't ask for much. I'm just asking to be able to play games. Like, is that so much? Is that so hard that, so yeah, that disappointed me a little bit. But there is another conference at the end of the year that I'm trying to get more people with disabilities in general that are in the XR industry, users or developers or anyone, and I have an option to pitch a panel for them, and I hope that works out, because I don't want to do that panel alone. I want to include other disabled people, so it's not just a singular talk about epilepsy. But yeah, I have hopes on that.
What are some options that developers could add that would help that aren't existing or non-existent today? Have you thought about that? Or
yeah, major things that, in my point of view, are not that hard to do. are, for example, the flashing and triggering and triggering and flickering of lights. So if some event has to have flashing lights, especially in red and white, not that the other colors don't trigger, but those are the main ones. If you have to have flashing lights that happen more often than 3 or more times per second, or that can be abused by the players to force it to happen 3 times or more per second. If you have to have those, if it's going to disrupt the gameplay to remove it, then just change it to black, change it to green, or just dim the brightness, remove the saturation, any kind of stuff like this that is basically a button in the settings of the game. Because most of the VR games as well, you don't have a settings page. A lot of games you don't. You might have a settings page in the main menu for like volume and music and sound effects control, but you don't have, most of the games you don't have a direct access to settings within the gameplay, and most of those settings as well are not accessible. So that one, just offering to change the colors or dim the brightness or remove the saturation, or just some type of preventing that effect from happening 3 times or more per second, that would be helpful. Again, if it's not going to disrupt the gameplay and make it unfair for others, I'm all in for that. If it will not disrupt the gameplay from removing, then give us the option to just turn it off. Like, just let me turn it off with light effects. Like in Beat Saber, I can turn it off. Like, for me, it already works great. So I love watching Twitch streams. I used to be a streamer back in the day. And one thing I can't do nowadays is watch my friends play Beat Saber because they're playing with the light effects on. And I am not going to reduce my window size on my screen to be like a tiny spot that I can only see a pixel. But at the same time, I can't watch it because they have the lights on. And I don't want to force them to deduct from their experience just so I can watch it while 50 other people in the room want to see the light effect. So I can't watch Beat Saber because there's no option on stream platforms to control that as well, and that would be great. At least in the game, I can do that, and I can enjoy the game. I don't care if I'm not getting the beautiful light effects that I would love to see. I don't care if I'm missing that. As long as I get to play the core game and I get the same experience and the same points, like, why not, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, the main thing for...
I was gonna say, some people are just dense like that, because, like, no one can still explain to me why Netflix has a red end for a logo and a black background in their logo when, you know, I have a 100-inch projector in my office with like blackout curtains and all this stuff, and I have hue lights that PJ turned me on to that'll match the color of the screen to light up and be dynamic. And then it's pitch black in my room, and then Netflix loads and it's got the brightest white background with that red end, or when even it's the red background, and it's just like, oh my god. And that's gonna make me sick, and that's just because it's just overwhelming. And it's like, what idiot? Offense should be taken, Netflix, wherever you're looking from. Who thought that was a good idea? Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all in for making every experience, whether it be a game, a movie, anything, as amazing as possible and as awesome and as many effects as possible. But just give us the option to turn those off if it's not going to conflict with the experience and with the fairness of the gameplay. In the case of a game, like just give us the tools and we'll work with it. If I have access to stuff, I can work with it. For example, for the Apex, I'm still hoping I'll never get banned for it. But what I did is I used some commands to reduce the muzzle flash, and to also just destroy my game quality so that I can run in a higher FPS, because I use a 200 hertz monitor so that I don't get that motion blur and I don't get those ghosting effects that can cause me a trigger, because the ghosting effects work just like the contrast patterns that I talked about a little before, and that can cause me a seizure. I still haven't been able to find a code to disable that flash in the character selection screen, but what I do now is just every time I get into a game, I look the other way and I close my eyes at the same time, because even though the flash, I'm not seeing the flash will reflect on the walls, and just in case, I cover my eyes during the character selection. So just even if I just had access to those string commands that I can use when opening a game on Steam, additional commands for admins or whatever, even if we just had access to that, that would already help. I could myself just make a guide for every single game out there. Hey, if you're epileptic, use these commands and you'll have a better game. Like, I could do that as if I knew. Like, I just want to know that I can use stuff and that there's a stuff there that I can use to make it better.
Yeah.
You could change those guys' minds. The ones that ready up and then unready up and then ready up over and over again, trying to speed everybody else up. It's like, hey, jackass, give me 40 seconds. I'm going to use it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and in Apex, it even isn't like 40 seconds. It's like 10 seconds, I think, per person.
Yeah.
So, like, how can you be so impatient? It's for Apex specifically, I take it as they are intentionally trolling. Because it's just 10 seconds and it's 3 players tops, so that's 30 seconds of waiting. If you have to look at a screen for 30 seconds, you can't take off your eyes on the screen for 30 seconds. Like, you're really intentionally trying to piss off your teammates and give them a worse experience, even if you're not aware that it can give epilepsy. Just by flashing somebody else's screen when they don't want to, when they don't expect, it's already gonna piss them off. So, like, in Apex specifically, you're trying to piss off your teammates. You're trying to be a troll. You're probably a 15-year-old or a 48-year-old who never had love before and just wants to make life worse for everybody.
Oedipus complex.
Yeah.
A lot of movies do that stuff because, like, the flashes alone, like, yeah, it can be cool in like big bursts of light, but when they do that thing where like it whites out the screen for a second, yeah, it can have some sort of dramatic effect, but why? I just never understood it because you'll see sometimes when like an explosion happens, it'll flash white, and then it'll something else happen to be like, just have an explosion. And I was just watching some old Star Trek episode where they had to unhypnotize a bunch of people, and they had a big hand light like in his hand, and he was like clicking like a rewiring, strobe light at the TV. And of course, if I've got my projector on, it's like, oh shit, just knock it off. Why? And that what this talk is making me realize all the stuff I've seen that was somewhat minor annoying to me could be really detrimental to people. And it's like, I've never heard anyone say, knock it off, like publicly, just do a little bit better. So that's kind of saddening.
Yeah, and we might never know, and we might never be able to pinpoint, but every single one of those annoyances that are annoying for people that are not disabled, they can, in a small percentage, be actually increasing your chances to develop epilepsy or some other disability as well. So, like, if you constantly play Beat Saber with the lights effects on and use the most crazy effects or whatever, if you play that every day, 8 hours a day, nonstop for 5 years, there's no way to detect or pinpoint or give point of fault to that specifically, but that might actually increase your chances of developing epilepsy because you can develop at any age. Although it's more common between 0 and between 1 and 25 years old, you can still develop in a later age. And even if you don't develop, it can still trigger a seizure on you. And then it goes like a whole year of your life going to doctors and getting checked up and scared for your life. Because after you have a seizure, it's the worst. I'm sorry for the language, but it's the worst fucking thing in the world. I had one about 10 days ago, and before that, I haven't had one for 3 years. And one of the things that epilepsy does to me, I'm flying around. It's all good. One of the things that epilepsy does to me, to epileptic people, is when you have seizures, more often than not, you actually lose some memory. Or if you don't lose recent memory, it actually damages your capacity of retaining memory. So, for example, I don't remember anything from the past 3 years and all. Like from my infancy and my childhood, if I don't have pictures and people to tell me, I don't remember anything. So like about 10 days or 15 days ago, I had a seizure while I was sleeping, and it was one of the major seizures where you fall on the ground and you shake and everything, and I was alone at home. Luckily, I was, as usual, always sleeping on my side, so I didn't get suffocated on my own and anything like that. But when I wake up, it's basically the whole day I'm exhausted mentally and physically, because it's like I went to the gym for those 2 to 3 minutes that I had a seizure. For those 2 to 3 minutes, it feels like I went to the gym nonstop for a whole week. And I also like was at school learning and using my brain and stuff for like a whole week nonstop as well, like not a single minute of stop. So I feel exhausted mentally and physically. And on top of that, it adds to the fear of like, shoot, I could have just died of SUDEP tonight, but I woke up. So that's where the good side comes in, and it makes me excited to do good stuff while I'm alive. But at the same time, I'm like, shoot, So yeah, those flashes in games and especially movies, most of the white flashes you can just change it to black. You can just nobody's gonna care. The intention is to make sure that the viewer, the spectator, or the player cannot see anything, right? So why just don't just make it black and just dim the screen to black,
And what pisses me off about this kind of stuff is most times, the uneducated people, and again, I'm going to make fun of Americans because apparently what might happen to other people doesn't affect you, so just fuck it. It's like, unless it's happening to you, like, oh, maybe we do need, paternity leave. Yeah, you don't know that unless you had a baby. But like, if you have this issue and you bring up this game would be great, like, Cyberpunk, sorry, you have these settings, but can you do something about this? Or, can we, have a sit down with one of your PR people and maybe figure it out? Half of their community, not everybody that's playing the game, is probably like, go play another game. And it's like, well, that's not helpful at all. Because a slightly related story, my girlfriend dealt with stuttering for a long time, and she somehow trained herself to get over it, which is miraculous in one end, but she hates talking on the phone or using voice chat. So like when Warcraft got real big, she was used to playing old games like Ragnarok online. It was a little 2D kind of MMO. Everyone was typing, good to go. As soon as it was like, oh, now you have to use voice chat, must have microphone, must have headset. She's like, and really didn't want it. And then they're like, guess you don't go raiding. So like the whole point of the game, is just like, well, I guess I can't play this game because nobody gives a crap. You have to find a certain guild. It's like, does it really hurt you to be a little more inclusive? Say, hey, it's fine if you talk in text versus, just have the earphone on so you can hear us, and then you can type and we can read that. And some people are just like big middle finger. It's like, okay.
For the independent games and developers, the small teams, it is understandable because the market is overly saturated for most genres, and they need to develop a game that will sell and will be attractive and will generate revenue for them so they can pay their bills. So I understand if those independent developers and small teams take longer to implement those features, but for AAA studios and publishers and all of those big boys in gaming industry in general, they have absolutely zero excuse to not try to offer some accessibility features other than color blindness. Like just a little bit more. It's not that hard, and you have the money and you have the revenue, you have the investors to do it. And all it takes is a couple of those big AAA titles and publishers and developers to start doing that to just cause a snowball effect. Yeah. All it took for the Battle Royale to become one of the most famous genres and most played genres of all time was PUBG. PUBG released, and it was buggy and broken and laggy as hell, and it was famous in China, and it got over to the west side of the world, and it got super famous, and now we have like a gazillion different Battle Royale games, The same goes for the Fall Guys. Fall Guys got famous out of nowhere, and it was a very quick game to make with a small team, and now you see a lot of copycats around. So all it takes is some big popular titles to just try to do better, and that will cause a snowball effect. Because who wouldn't prefer to play a game that is more inclusive and has accessibility options? Even if you are not disabled, it's the same thing. So, for example, if you want to buy chicken at the grocery store, you would prefer to buy chicken thighs that are from chickens that are raised on a free range, like eggs from chicken in a free range and stuff like that, rather than one that doesn't say anything about it. Like, we don't do anything about that. You will always prefer the good things that do good for somebody or something. So it all takes is a couple of the big guys to start doing better, and I think it will greatly influence everybody else to do it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Peter. You play, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and say what you want about Ubisoft's gameplay and any other controversies. I haven't really delved into it, but sometimes they have, like, even in the Xbox version, which usually lighter on options, there are so many options for. I'm sure a lot of it's colorblind and this and that and changing types, but there's like 3 pages of stuff I don't even sift through. I'll just go change my reticle color so I can, like, to magenta so I can see it on any background. But I just, be like 30 minutes looking up and down, like, this is actually cool, but I don't have a use for it. Doesn't mean it doesn't need to be there.
Those very few here and there.
I don't know. Like I said, they might as a whole have more of those options. It'd be great if they did.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, nobody's gonna complain about having options, right? Like,
Yep.
give players options, and nobody's gonna complain about one of the best things that ever happened to games is allowing the player to customize their experience, right? Especially those
Yep.
games that happen as it goes, and like Mass Effect's a big example. Depending on how you interact and how you act in the story, you have a different ending. Like, one of the best things that ever happened to the game industry is allowing the players to have control of their experience. So just give us more options. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And again, if a group of specialists and professionals manage to get together and develop some standard and offer some quick pages and setups and instructions for developers to do, I think that will help a lot. And just having that standard will also help to develop that certification, and then we can start filtering. I can start filtering games that are appropriate for me. You know, it doesn't need to be a bronze to gold level. It can be like accessible game, letter E, and that stands for people with epilepsy. So that's a game that is not gonna trigger seizures for me, but it might not be accessible for someone with another disability, but at least for people with epilepsy, I know that game is available for me. So yeah, it's a standard is needed, and it unfortunately that's not something I can do on my own. I don't have the knowledge for development like that to do stuff like that, and I don't think it's gonna take 5 guys. It's gonna take a bunch of big groups and communities, and especially the medical community that understands video games, the professionals that understand, and the developers, major developers and publishers to get together and do something about it. Like Microsoft started doing it, but I don't know where that's at now. But they do have a controller that is an adaptive controller, so that's really, 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 really nice.
Yeah.
So there's that. Yeah.
I've seen videos of dads with I think daughter had like MS or something like that, so he used the Xbox controller so she could play Breath of the Wild on the Switch. And I was like, that dad's got a heart of gold, but thank God Microsoft does something, because I think that controller is insanely expensive. I would like to try one out to customize it just for.
It's only $100. They want people to have that thing.
It's
that
fantastic.
Need it.
I thought it was like
$300.
$300.
And it's cross-platform, works everywhere. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's kind of like, if I met somebody who was suffering from that or had a kid that could use it, I would go out and like buy 4 of those. I would, I don't need to eat out for a couple weeks. I want this kid to be able to have a childhood, almost said kidhood, childhood. So get them, I would just go be handing those out like hotcakes, like free hotcakes.
Yeah, no, those controllers are amazing. And matter of fact, there's one charity called Able Gamers that I have yet to get in touch with them. But they are focused specifically on that. They make video games more accessible for people with motion disabilities, or motion, temporary or permanent motion issues or disabilities, whatever. And they make some special controllers for people with those disabilities, and then they give it to them. They do a whole shebang, and they raise a lot of money for that. And the CEO of Able Gamers, I always forget his name, but he's actually very popular on Twitter and very vocal about accessibility, because he himself is disabled and he's like bound on a chair, and he uses the solutions that they developed and the adaptive controller from Xbox and all other things. So the main guy of the charity is one of the guys that the charity was developed for. So there are a lot of good groups trying to do good out there. It's just that they are not connected and they're not aware of each other, and the ones that they're supposed to support, those guys and those charities, are just either ignoring or also not aware of them, like developers themselves. Yeah.
And a lot
Before
of it
we,
sorry, go ahead.
I just want to open up. Anyone, Madman or Diamond, any questions about anything or comments? No. Okay, just checking. Sorry, go ahead.
Say a lot of it might start with individuals, so people who have disabilities that might not speak up because they just, they'll just accept it and be like, well, I guess I just can't play that game. They need to hear that other people are fighting the struggle, so they should speak up, because the louder that voice gets, the more it gets heard. But then on the converse, if you're one of those motherfuckers that would say, dude, I guess you don't play the game. Stop complaining. Just shut the fuck up. If you're listening and it's you, grow up. Let these people talk. Because, like, if I didn't have video games as a childhood, I don't know what we'd be doing.
Yeah,
like, it's the Midwest.
I'd probably
Wisconsin,
be very depressed right now.
it's boring out there unless you'd like to raise cows. Like, we would have been like, all I did was read books and play video games and barely did my homework. Like, you got to have some imagination. Let some people live. So don't be that asshole. I'm pointing at some cameras here. Don't be that asshole. And if you are that asshole, change and maybe help somebody for once. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Yeah, I have some encounters, especially I talk about Apex a lot because that's the main game that I've been playing recently. But I've had a lot of encounters in Apex that the player was doing that character selection thing, and when I told him like, hey, dude, I have epilepsy, it would be nice if you didn't do that. Even though we might never ever play again together, at least you know not to do it to somebody else. And I hear exactly that. The guys always said, or the girls, whoever, I don't know who's behind that computer, they always say, oh, you have epilepsy? You shouldn't be playing video games then. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, dude. That's what I love. Like, I've been playing video games ever since I was 3 years old. My brother put me to play Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Genesis when I was 3 years old and forced me to beat it. And ever since, I just couldn't stop playing video games. Like, it's his fault. Blame my brother, not me. But like, that's what I love. It's the same. It doesn't make any sense. It's the same thing as you telling a woman she shouldn't get out of home wearing a skirt because she would get raped. Like, you can't tell somebody not to do something. Like you don't have control of somebody like that. Like, I just want to play games. Like, can I just play games? That's all. I'm not gonna bother the other person. I'm not gonna. But yeah, but the biggest thing is the reason I wasn't vocal about epilepsy until a year and a half ago, especially this year, is because my whole life I suffered bullying from it. I was always bullied about it. At school, at elementary school back in Brazil, I actually went to the hospital. I had to be sent into an ambulance because a kid grabbed the flashlight and held my head and kept flashing it until I had a seizure. I was, like I said, I've never been photosensitive, but they did it so much. They had one of those flashlights that you press a button and it keeps like on and off automatically, and they just held it literally like a gunpoint on my eyes, and I went to the hospital. So like my whole life, I've always tried to, at the same time that I'm trying to stay alive and enjoy everything I want, also not telling people, because one, I don't want people to feel sorry for me and give me a better treatment or something like that, but also I don't want to risk that person who might find out that I have epilepsy to just treat me worse or tell me that I can't do something. Like, you can't tell me I can't do anything. Like, I came from the favelas. I came from a poor family where my grandpa made kitchen utensils out of dirt and sewed, and we grew up and we evolved and we got successful in life, and now I'm living in another country doing charity leagues in virtual reality for schools in whole other country. You can't tell me I can't do anything. I can do anything I want to, you know? Like, I came from the very, very, very bottom of the economy and the world, and you can't tell me I can't do anything. So that's one of the reasons most people are not vocal about it. They're just afraid of retaliation. And I agree. More people starting to be more vocal and having the courage and having the mental stability to actually absorb those retaliations and those issues and those bad people and try to transform it into good and not let it affect you. The more people that do it will be better, and then it would just incentivize other people to be vocal as well.
Yeah. I'm so glad you didn't listen and made your way, because yeah, I can't stand like bullies and people just being dumb. Like, just be nice. It's so easy to be nice to someone.
Yeah. It's like, I guess you could give up your entire hobby, or I could stop pushing the A button a couple times.
Yeah.
Just give up
exactly.
your hobby.
And I understand a little bit of bullying here and there. I wouldn't even call it bullying, but a little bit of irritating somebody else in the game, because we're gamers. We're gonna try to troll a little bit here and there, but everybody knows their limits. Everybody knows when they cross the line. Like, if you're over 15 years old, you have a self-conscious. Your brain's developing by itself. You're not necessarily 100% obeying your parents and doing everything as they tell. You have your own consciousness, and you can understand when you cross their line. and if you realize you crossed the line, even if you're like ashamed of saying I'm sorry, just stop doing it. You don't even necessarily need to say sorry to the person. As long as you stop doing, that person is going to realize you intentionally stopped doing something that was annoying to them or damaging to them, and they're going to be grateful for that. Regardless if you say sorry or not. If you say sorry, yes, that's going to make their day, their week. You know, it's going to be super amazing to see that person change. But even if you don't, you're already making their life better by just not doing it. So, yeah, it's a little bit of irritating in games is fine, but bullying in general, even outside of games, is just the damaging bullying side of things is just unacceptable. I don't understand how that is still a thing.
Yeah.
People just don't know.
One of the mysteries of life.
Yeah. I don't think we'll figure that one out anytime soon. Unfortunately.
Yeah. So yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just had one other question. Have you found any games or any developers working on games to treat epilepsy? Because we've talked to a couple of developers that actually work on those kinds of things. Have you found anything like that? Not that you can cure it or anything like that, I'm saying, but
yeah,
there are.
I mean, if anybody out there is developing something and wants me to try it out, please contact me in any way. I'm more than happy to help test those things. As far as VR or flat game developers in general, developing something to treat epilepsy or to detect or something specific like that, I don't think I know any. I do know two brothers who contacted me on DMs a long time ago, I think over a year, because they were trying to develop exactly what I said, like an external application that could be on top of games and deactivate those effects that are triggering seizures. But I lost touch with them. I should get back in touch with them. I don't know where the progress is, but I give them a full-on report on all those little things that I could think of with the basic coding knowledge that I have that they could make to work on top of games in general. So I know those two guys that they wanted to do that, and they just came to me in the DMs out of nowhere, and they're like, "Yeah, I saw you talking about epilepsy. Can you help us? Because we want to do this. Like, no, we're not trying to profit anything, just offer." But I don't know where that's at. Especially for VR, that's even rare. It's even harder to find.
We've talked to a couple people. I'll mention and see what they say or what they bring up, because it'd be interesting. Because I don't know if anyone else has heard this, but I've heard of like VR like helping cure eyesight, and I've heard it like there's a couple of obviously like the meditation apps and relaxation apps, but there was one other, I can't think of what the affliction was, but they actually can treat that stuff with VR.
Yeah, I remember one of those two, but I don't remember which.
Yeah, there is a lot of medical VR applications that are there to treat specific things, and even applications to actually train professionals in sports. Like Brazil, you have an actual soccer VR trainer that actually is proven to better the performance of athletes. And I know there are many uses. Even some games like Rich's Plank Experience, you can find countless reports of people who won over their fear of heights because of playing Rich's Plank Experience. Like, it's amazing. I used to manage an arcade that is closed right now. We're opening next month a VR arcade here in San Mateo, and the Rich's Plank Experience is one of my favorite experiences to put new VR players through, because it's just amazing. And then I always ask them, like, are you afraid of heights? Do you have like a sensitive heart or a probability of having a heart attack or something? If they say no to all of those, I put them through, and then I explain to them, like, hey, this game is actually used by people to win over their fear of heights, their phobias. I know there are a lot, not a lot, but there are plenty, and there should be more VR applications for different treatments and different conditions and different disabilities. Just for epilepsy specifically, I'm not aware of any. But if you guys know, please, put me in touch. And I'll love to speak to them and test everything and break stuff and and do all their feedback. With that being said, one of the recent
thing.
Mhm.
Sorry to butt in, but when you do the plank thing, when you show people, do you actually put like a plank on the ground? Because I've heard
Most-
that enhances
yeah.
the experience to the point of people falling down.
It does. Most VR arcades that I know, the owners, they do have that plank, that physical plank that people walk on. I do not, because even without the plank, I've already had too many people falling. And I always have to either catch them or I miss it for a half a second and they're on the ground. And also because the stations in my VR arcade, they are little cubes, and the walls are fabric. They're not like hard walls or anything. It's just fabric so that in case they punch with the controller, it doesn't break. But also the floor is padded. So it's just the space for each player is just too small to have a plank on for them to walk on. And it would just be too troublesome. But yeah, I've been to a few VR events where people put the planks on for people who've never played it before to try it out, and their reactions are amazing.
I was just
Yeah,
curious because
it's lovely to watch. Yeah, it's a great game. Yeah, one of the recent things that happened that I'm really appreciative is Oculus themselves enabling the 120 hertz. First the 90 hertz and then the 120. Because for example, right now in VR, the two major things that give me a lot of headache and then it forces me to stop playing to prevent the seizure is one being the game being laggy either on my end, like low FPS, or on the server end with actual lag, and trying to do it lag compensation and whatnot. So for example, right now, if my internet goes slow and I'm gonna see you guys teleporting a little bit here and there and doing the head movement super fast and doing like this, that's gonna give me headaches. And also the refresh rate, like I said before, when I first got the Quest, it was 72 hertz, and I could only play 30 minutes a day because my head would explode. Now it's 90, and most games are implementing 120 now, and 90 is becoming the standard. And 120 from the games that I've tested, and especially the main menu, is just amazing. I can actually finally use my Quest for longer than 45 minutes. Because otherwise I have various other headsets in here in my home that I always try to test it out. Otherwise I'm forced to use a Valve Index. And then I have to do 144 hertz, but then my computer is not a NASA computer to run every single game at high quality, so some games I have to lower the quality to be able to get 144. So yeah, that's one thing I'm really happy about is the VR headset manufacturers paying attention to the high refresh rate. Even though they're doing it because they want to offer just gamers more reaction time and everything, and just a better gaming experience. Even though they're not aware that that is actually very helpful for epileptic people, I'm really appreciative and I'm all in for it. Like the more headsets have high refresh rate, the better.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I told you we wouldn't get to all of our topics. Oh. But
we have to have a
yeah,
second-
going
second
forward, like,
episode.
well, I kind of mentioned, like, if you want to come back once a month and just to put that awareness out, or if there's anything we can do to help, let us know. But we're coming up in an hour and a half, so I don't want to take up your time or anyone else's time. So yeah, just keep us in the loop and let us know what we can do, and definitely want to help get the awareness out there and brainstorm. If it's just brainstorming ideas to help or something like that, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, I'm. You guys have no idea how thankful I am for you guys giving me this opportunity. And keep in mind, anyone watching this, and especially you guys, one day if it happens that I get super famous, or one day it happens that VR becomes more accessible, you guys can say, "Hey, we brought Leo here first. We were the first ones." Providing that awareness and sharing that information, and all those different ways that games can be more accessible. I'm really, really appreciative, and I'm more than happy to come here every month. If you want to do it, just let me know any day and time, and I'll just book that day out of on my calendar, and I'll be more than happy to be here. It's really an honor, and I'm really thankful for you guys to give me the opportunity.
No problem. I always try to put myself in someone else's shoes, and like gaming something you love. And if it's like I have bad, like, and I'm not comparing this in any way, but some nights where it's like, oh, I have to get up and change my controller battery. That's enough to make me go do something else some nights. So it's just like all the barriers you put up with to do something you love. It's just I want nothing more than to like help you get to where you want to be with all that accessibility and options. And
I think enough people have enough empathy because, you know, now I feel bad complaining about even some of my favorite VR games. They always have the same problem. When like the logo or whatever's coming up, the splash screen, the music is so deafeningly loud. There's no option to, you can change everything else, but that's just going to happen. But at least I can play the game, you know? So like, it's like maybe I should not complain about that stuff as much. And maybe I should complain on other people's behalfs and like add my voice to that. Even if it doesn't bother me, I don't care. I'd rather have everybody play the game and deal with that same deafening noise that's annoying.
So we can all complain about the same thing.
Yeah, just complain about that thing. That's fine.
Yeah, just keep in mind that even the things, if for anyone who does not have any disability, if there are elements in a game, in an experience that are annoying enough to you that make you not want to play the game or not watch the experience or do anything, those elements most likely are even more annoying for people with disabilities. So even though, don't think that, oh, I'm complaining about something that is not worth it because there's somebody with a worse condition than I do, that couldn't even try this. Like, don't devalue your disappointment over something that is annoying and triggering to you just because you don't have epilepsy, because most likely that thing that is triggering you is most likely also triggering people with disability, most likely even more. So yeah, exercise your voice as well even for non-disability reasons. Like if you want to be able to control the volume of the music in a game, or reduce the volume in an opening screen, or the Netflix, like I want to just disable the Netflix splash screen. Everyone should be exercising their right to demand those things. It is included in accessibility. Even if you don't have a disability, if any changes or options or features can make the game or software experience more enjoyable for all, that's accessibility. That's inclusivity. You know, it doesn't necessarily need to be for one disability. It can be for everybody.
And I get that.
Yeah.
Small annoyances versus completely game-breaking options that are missing is Wookiee games suck.
Yeah, if you put it on a balance, definitely there are some things that should be put in priority. But yeah, do exercise your voice and don't think that your small annoyances are less valuable or should be ignored, because it might happen that your small annoyances is a big deal for someone with a disability and they're just not exercising their voice. So you might be able to help somebody that you never know, you would never meet, because you just told them that, hey, I am a normal person and no disabilities, but I'm annoyed at this. And then they fix it, and then suddenly like there's 500 different players playing the game because now they're not getting a seizure, you know? So you never know. You're small, the annoyances that might be small to you might be actually big to people with disabilities. So yeah, anything that annoys you, we have the right to tell the developers to fix it and to change it because we bought the product. Unless you pirated it, then you shouldn't have a voice. But if you bought it, and like you have the right to ask them to make the game more enjoyable for you.
You're a lot nicer than I am, because like I will always be an advocate for the quality of the game just to increase, because why not? We're paying you the money. But you're like, you know, like let's all work together, make it better. And whereas, you know, in the Wookiee planet, not really Kashyyyk, but you know, in my mind, it's sort of like, I straight up send him an email and say, this game is dog shit. I want my money back. And Xbox has been starting to fund my games because I'm like, this developer's, you know, tanking. This is not what they offered, and blah, 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 blah. And then like 30 minutes later, I've got a full refund. I'm like, well, shit. So just call them dog shit. That's the secret word.
Yeah, I mean, do keep in mind developers are people too. So, you might the person who reads the the person who reads your email or your review might not be the person responsible for the things that pissed you off, and that might actually be very, very, very sad for that person's day or month or week. So just keep that in mind. But
dog. Did I say this game can be better?
No, absolutely, yeah. Yeah,
Shit.
I agree with you. Yeah, just for anyone out there, don't curse on the developer. Hate
No.
hate the publisher. Don't hate the developer.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, play a game in VR for like 5 hours and be amazed. But I'll get, PJ probably hates me for bashing on it, but like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, 5 minutes into that, I'm like, come on, guys, you should be doing better. Maybe don't use 17 studios to make one game and get a refund.
Yeah, no, totally. I understand. I feel you there. I'm like that with some games too. I just couldn't get around and play it.
It's dog
But
shit.
yeah, I do gotta say I am getting a little bit of headaches. I do gotta step
Yeah,
out,
I
but
was gonna
I
say.
really appreciate giving me access and this platform to speak about it. And like I said, please, anytime you guys have openings, let me know. And you want to talk about anything, whether it's not even it's not disabilities. If you want to talk about the league or VR games, I'm always happy to be part of.
Definitely.
We need
Yeah,
to
we'll do
run
our
through it.
sign off quick. I was going to bring it up. Like, it's been an hour and a half. I get hot and stuff with a headset on, so I just thought I'd say, hey.
Yeah, I just jinxed myself because I said if my internet gets low, you guys start teleporting, and then you guys started teleporting. So it's starting to give me a little bit of a headache because I jinxed my internet. So yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, thanks for hanging out and chatting. This has been episode 73 of the VR Verdict podcast. I am PJ.
Okay.
And Leo, yeah.
And this was our VR Verdict.